is not what you know, it's what you can prove.
You know how to cut to the core of me, Baxter. You're so wise. But like a miniature Buddha, covered in hair.
I want to become a guru so girls will like me. Then I will like myself.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?
This episode is brought to you by Hack Motion. Hack Motion is a cutting-edge wrist sensor for teaching wrist motion for compressed tour-like shots. I spent some time with these guys down at the show, and I really enjoyed how easy it was to use, and the calibration time was super simple, and especially the biofeedback option that will definitely make for a more effective golf lesson for your students. You can use it with your iPhone, your iPad, and it gives your students the feel to go along with the reel as you teach the proper wrist motion for better club face control, which, as you know, is huge in the teaching game. Used by some of the top coaches in our industry, Hack Motion is a must for serious golf teachers, coaches, or players. Also, when ordering upon checkout, use the promo code GURU, G-U-R-U, to receive free shipping, which is a $30 value. For more information and to order, visit their website at hackmotion.com, HACKMOTION.com today. This episode is sponsored by Alpha Herd Performance Clothing. At Alpha Herd, we believe that everyone is good at something, whether it be your favorite sport, hobby, or anything you're really passionate about. Our clothes are designed for you to not only look good, but also feel good while you're on the field, court, stage, or the top of the mountain. At the end of the day, we can rest assured that in whatever we do, we give it our best. Be the Alpha Herd of your herd. I can tell you this stuff is great. It really is comfortable. It's stylish. It's got a really cool logo. They've got regular t-shirts, long sleeve t-shirts, stuff you can work out in, which is really cool. An up-and-coming company for sure, so you want to check them out. You can go to alpha-herd.myshopify.com to check out these cool products, and I guarantee you, you won't be disappointed. What's up, everyone, and welcome to the Golf Guru Show. I am your host, Jason Sutton, aka The Guru, where it is my mission to deconstruct the habits, life lessons, daily rituals, and ideas that you can add to your teaching and self-development toolbox that can assist you in helping your students or change your life in a positive way. Thank you so much for the support. And if you're listening to this, make sure you download and make sure you hit that purple subscribe button, as this is very important to the success of this podcast. I'm very excited about this next episode, as my guest is PGA Tour player Mackenzie Hughes. You can follow him on Twitter at MacHughesGolf and check out his website at MackenzieHughesOfficial.com to follow his career. Mackenzie has been on the PGA Tour since 2016, and in his fifth PGA Tour start as a member, he won the RSM Classic, becoming the first Canadian-born golfer to win on the PGA Tour since Nick Taylor at the 2014 Sanderson Farms Championship, and the first to win a non-alternate event since Mike Weir in 2007, the Fry's Electronic Open. He was also the first rookie in over 20 years to win wire-to-wire, which is really, really cool. So in this conversation, we discussed the learning moments of his career and life on the PGA Tour, the importance of a consistent plan for preparation, and how he used a reflection journal to pull himself out of a slump and get back onto the big stage. And ultimately, a great recap of his PGA Tour victory at the RSM Classic that you don't want to miss. So much great information in this conversation that aspiring juniors and college players and really golfers alike can take away, that reveal how these guys on tour think, how they prepare, and how they set themselves up for success, which is really what this show is all about. So I'm really excited to bring you this conversation from my friend Mackenzie Hughes. Enjoy. All right, Mackenzie Hughes, welcome to the Golf Show, man. Appreciate you coming through.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We met, I guess, 4 or 5 years ago, maybe.
Yeah, probably 4 years
when you
ago.
moved to Charlotte and did a little bit of work together. And I'm good friends with your swing coach, Scott Kelks. And so we've got some cool stuff to talk about. And you've had a great career as a young professional already on the PGA Tour. So it'll be interesting to kind of go through your story and through your history and share with the listeners kind of how you've got to where you are today. So let's start with your childhood. Tell us about your junior golf and sort of how you got into the game, and we'll kind of build it from there.
Yeah, well, growing up in Canada, it's a little bit different than it is here. And obviously with my season being quite short, I filled my time a lot in the off season by doing other things. I didn't play golf year round as a youngster, so I'd play hockey, play basketball, volleyball, and all the other sports, and golf kind of took a back seat in the winters. And so I started playing. I think I was 7 years old, and my parents started taking me to the golf course, and cut down driver, cut down putter, and I would just tee off, pick it up, throw it in the green, start putting, and from there I kind of got the bug and the itch to keep playing. And I started out just playing on a par 3 course, so I was 8-9 years old, and for a few years I just played on a par 3 course like every summer, every day. Like, it was just, I loved to do it. I could be there all day playing the same par 3 course all day, and it didn't matter. So that was really cool, and I think it was a great starting point for golf because it was like all short shots, all like kind of chipping and just feel shots, and it
almost starting from the hole and working backwards a little bit.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. So that was kind of a neat start, and I worked my way up to the longer course at the same club when I was 12, and then first tournament I played in was that same summer. I was 12 years old, and I remember finishing second in my first tournament. It was like an Ontario provincial tournament, and it was for under 13. So
remember what you shot?
It was 2 rounds. I think I shot 69-71.
Oh my!
But the golf course was really, really short. But it was still, I thought it was still pretty good. And so I played that tournament, and from that point on, it was like I had to play and compete at that point. It was like I loved that thrill and the adrenaline of being...
That was your ignition.
Yeah. And, I played hockey and all that, but nothing really made me feel like I did when I was playing golf. And it took me till I was about 15, 16-ish to really kind of isolate and just focus on golf.
Is that when you sort of...
That's kind of when I...
started playing golf full time and
yeah.
you got rid of the other sports?
Yeah, so I would still casually play the other sports, but I was fully committed to golf at that point and thinking that I wanted to get really good and see how good and how far I could take it. And so that eventually led me to Kent State University, and I spent all 4 years there, and that was, the time of my life. I loved Kent State. So
take us back just before that. Talk about the recruiting process a little bit. Did you have to come to the States to play some like AJGAs? This is kind of for the kids out there that are looking to play college golf. What's that process look like for a kid from Canada?
Yeah, so it's definitely tough being from Canada because obviously the travel expense and the burden to come down, because really if you want to be seen, you need to play in the States.
Sure.
Even if it's only a small amount, you just need to be exposed a little bit to a coach or coaches down here. And, some are willing to come to Canada, and my coach was. But I think I played in 2 AJGAs and had some good success. I think I finished 10th in one, and never played in the U.S. Junior. But I just had a very small, brief exposure in the States, and I wrote to, I think, I want to say 50 or 60 universities, and I wrote every one of them by hand.
Oh,
so
wow.
I wrote every letter.
Not email.
Wow,
that's impressive.
Not typed. I wrote every single letter handwritten.
That is so cool.
And I ended up getting, I think I got a reply from almost everybody, and then probably 8 to 10 serious, hey, we've kind of seen what you've been doing, and, keep playing well, and, we'll keep an eye out for you. And one of the responses I got was from Kent State and her page, and I had known some of the Canadians that had gone through that program, and I knew he had a history of recruiting some Canadians. So that immediately kind of caught my eye, and he had done some recruiting in Canada, so I was aware that he might show up from time to time in the summer. And I still remember the first time he came to watch me when I was playing in Ontario. I think it was an Ontario junior, so this is under 18. And I was just so nervous because you feel like it's like an audition basically.
Right, it's an interview.
Yeah, and you want to play your best for him, but you also don't want to. If you're not playing your best, you don't want to, push him away by acting like a kid out there either.
Sure.
Right? So if it's not going your way, you need to kind of keep it together and
attitude, body language.
All of it is a package. So I think I remember telling myself that, okay, you really want to play well, but if you don't, let's keep your head on straight out here. And we talked after the round, and he had told me that he'd been following me for a while, and it's kind of cool to hear that when you've been trying to kind of get somewhere to play golf and to get a scholarship, to hear that people have been watching you and keeping an eye on you. So I remember that was kind of the turning point for me that really kind of swung me towards Kent State, and ended up going on a visit and seeing the facilities and the campus, and loved everything about it. So there was one other school that I was considering and that I went for a visit with, which was Penn State. And really the swing for me was not that they didn't have great coaches, but I just heard Page and his track record at Kent State with some of the guys he'd produced in the program, and just the Canadian pipeline going through there and the facilities, everything about it was just the right fit for me.
The players seemed to be getting better. Was that a big factor?
Yeah, players were getting better, and the program had always been really strong, and especially in the last, I would say 6-7 years before I got there, they were starting to kind of make pushes for getting into the national championship most years, and they were winning their conference almost every year. And I think it was the year before I got there, they had finished 6th in the nation, and they were ranked, I think, 12th or 13th in the country. So I walked in as a freshman, onto a great team that was doing really well, and the expectation was really high, and started out pretty well in my freshman campaign. And
Did you get to play?
I played every round at Kent State. I never missed a tournament.
That's amazing.
But I played 5-man my freshman year for a good bit of the fall. And then, I ran some rough patches as most freshmen do, just trying to adjust to college life and balancing your work and your being away and all that stuff. And I think the biggest adjustment for me was that, I'd come from junior golf, and then you go to college golf, and I think the golf courses are just that much better, and they expect that much more of you, and they demand that much more of you. So that to me was something that I took a little while to get accustomed to, but I ended up enjoying it because it didn't require you to make a bunch of birdies often. Like if you could shoot 1-2 under par, those are great rounds. And usually you're playing in, crappy weather.
Exactly, yeah. I don't think people realize that
college golf doesn't chase the sun like the PGA Tour does.
Exactly, and I think that people see the scores on college tournaments, and they're like, oh, I can shoot 74. They didn't realize it was 40, blowing 20, and the pins were tucked.
Yeah. And
they're playing at 7,300 yards. I mean, they set it up tough.
Yeah. Like I remember my freshman year playing Ohio State's tournament at the Scarlet course. And so we're playing in the spring. It's like April in Ohio. And, we haven't really been outside a ton. The weather's been kind of dicey up until then. And, we're playing in Ohio at Ohio State's tournament. And the golf course is like tipped out 7,600 yards.
Wow.
It's soft, and the pins are all put in like the corners of the greens, and I'm like, what? Like I've never seen anything like this. I'm like, you shoot 75, you just bawled your eyes out.
Yeah, it's probably par, right?
Yeah, and I remember shooting like I think mid to high 70s every day, and like those weren't bad scores. Like I think I finished middle of the pack in that tournament, but it takes you a while to wrap your head around the fact that in college, sometimes 75 is a great score.
Sure.
Because you come from junior golf when it's like, these courses are set up to make birdies, and they're no rough, and they're kind of short. So you shoot, 69, you're like, oh, this is a piece of cake, right? And then you get to college, and it's a bit different. So, yeah.
So when did you feel like you were ready to turn pro? Like, I know it's probably maybe late in your college career, and you go, I think I can give this thing a go.
Yeah.
Or was it like early on going, all right, this is my goal, is to play the tour. I'm going to get there. Or is it like late when you go, all right, I think I've got the game? Or did somebody push you in that direction, like your coach? Do you have a talk with your coach?
Yeah, no, I don't think anyone really pushed me, but I think it was always on the radar for me. But I also was a realist and knew that I needed to get better. Like when I went to Kent State and went through my freshman year, like I knew that, I had a long way to go before I could, think about making a living doing this. A funny story, my freshman year, we went to our regional tournament. So we got through our conference, won our conference. We had just shot like the lowest score ever in school history. Like we just played awesome at our conference tournament. I remember I finished, our 1, 2, and 3 guys, we all finished 1, 2, 3 in the tournament.
Wow.
So I was the 3 guy. I'd worked my way up to 3, was playing pretty solid golf. And the regional tournament was in New Jersey. And we played a golf course that was really difficult. And the first day, it was blowing like 30 constant. And I remember just first off, not having my A game, and then just getting absolutely exposed. Like, wasn't flighting the ball properly, couldn't keep it out of the wind. So I shot 88 the first day.
Oh, wow.
Like, just posted a huge number, and you're like, that just like, the tournament before, I think I had shot like, 10 under par for 4 days. And then I go out and shoot 88, and I'm like, where's my golf game gone? And I think I shot 79 the next 2 days, but just on a golf course that was playing brutally tough. But obviously the first day, just takes a lot of wind out of your sails. Right?
Sure, yeah.
But I remember thinking to myself, okay, well, clearly, you don't have it all figured out yet. Like you come into that tournament feeling pretty good, but then it was like, okay, step back, realize, okay, this is pretty hard, and there's still lots of work to do. So I think when I really believed I could do it and play professionally was probably somewhere in the middle of like the junior and senior year. I remember winning the Canadian Amateur heading into my senior year. And that's kind of when I was kind of gaining some momentum and some traction as to like, okay, I'm kind of figuring things out, and I've, won some big tournaments now. So you're kind of proving it to yourself that, okay, if you can win at these levels, you're getting close to where you need to be to get to the next level.
And you're ranked number 1 in Canada at this point, right? This is 2011?
2011, yeah.
And you're on the Canadian national team.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. How was that, and how did that help prepare you for the next level? Because you guys do a great job of training up there. I know your coach, the national coach up there, had
Derek
a big
Ingram.
Derek is a friend of mine, had a big influence on you as well, right?
So I've been really fortunate to be part of that program, and I think Canada is one of the leaders in the pack in terms of the way that they develop their top amateur golfers. I can't speak to other sports, but I know for golf that we have a very advanced program, and I was lucky to be part of that for, I want to say at least 4 or 5 years, late junior and then into my amateur career. And there's just so many resources available to you. First off, you've got, world-class coach and Derek Ingram that, has been around, he's played, but he knows how to prepare and get ready to win tournaments, and just he's so good at just ways to practice and all that good stuff. And then we have sports psychology, nutritionist, physio, trainer, but all that's, provided for you, and it's all at your disposal. I mean, you can use it as little or as much as you want. And I was always one of those guys that wanted to tap into every sort of resources I could. And it was just a invaluable tool. I mean, I'm going through college, and I've got, help from my college coaches, but I've also got this help back home in Canada as well. And then when you're off for the summers and you're training with that team, it's just I had a year-round environment of just always trying to get better and people trying to help me, and so I was very fortunate to be a part of that. And I've always wondered. Again, I know the United States has a much bigger population. There's so many golfers to choose from. But if there was anything even remotely close to that in the United States, I think it would be tremendously beneficial for a lot of guys. Just because I don't think that, some guys, like I learned how to practice efficiently and learned how to do things on a more professional level early on, I think.
So important.
Yeah, I think just being organized and having your things together, like it's kind of seems like a small thing, but I really think it's a big factor in getting ready to play well earlier.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely your strength and your superpower is that ability to have everything together. Like I said, you got a great team. You seem to basically look under every rock.
Yeah.
The fitness, the nutrition, I'm sure, the rest, all the travel. And I got some questions as we go forward as, what you've learned as you got onto the big tour.
Yeah.
But it seems like you were ready to kind of take that next step.
For sure. It was just, even as far as like sleep, we had a sleep expert, telling
That's
us,
amazing.
like, telling
That's
us,
crazy.
how important it really is. Like, and until it comes from someone that, has done the research and has the stuff backing it up, you're like, wow, this is stuff I just had never thought about. Like,
right. Slight edge.
Like things that, like taking naps, like we're encouraged to take naps almost every day because of that, you look at a guy like Roger Federer and she goes, hey, look at his sleep schedule. He sleeps 11 hours a day, and like you look at yourself and you're like, well, I'm getting 8 hours. Like, it's just
he's not sleeping, he's training.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like he's recovering and he's getting his body ready to compete, and just little stuff like that where I think people just Derek Ingram, my coach or the national team coach, he would always call those like the point ones, and it's like if you could do all the point ones really well, like just eat well, do recovery after rounds, get good sleep, cut out the junk food and just water and more vegetables and like little small stuff that you can control, and it doesn't require any skill to do those things, but just having the discipline to say, if I put all those things together, they add up to something really great. So I think that's something that I've always been pretty good at, but that's also something that was drilled home, under that program, was that if we do all these things together, it's going to end up being pretty good.
Yeah, it sounds like the culture definitely was a big part of that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, where did you get that discipline? Discipline's a big word, especially for guys out there trying to make it to the next level, whether it's going from high school to college or college to pro. What was early on? Was it your parents? Did you have some influences early on before Coach Ingram?
Yeah, to be honest, I was always self-driven, so
So it was an innate ability.
Like it really, don't get me wrong, my parents are the reason I'm here to begin with. They got me started, and they were driving me to tournaments that no one wants to go to, but they were doing it. But from a young age, no one needed to tell me to go to the golf course. No one was telling me to be there at 7 a.m. when I was literally playing for nothing.
I hope all the junior golfers are listening to this.
Like, I was, from 8 years old on, basically, every summer day, I'm there at 7 a.m. Like, my parents dropped me off first thing in the morning, and I was there till sundown, almost every day. I don't even know if I would really take days off, because that was all I wanted to do. And so the discipline thing for me comes from, I think, just wanting to do really well.
You're passionate.
And
yeah.
Like, that was what made me happiest, was playing golf. So the discipline part came easy. I think now the trick is, it's almost the reverse though, because I still need to find, the elements of golf that make it fun for me. But now I do it for a living. So
Sure.
there's it's a different sort of element, or I don't know what the word is, but it's a bit different the way I approach it now, because if I come home from, let's say, this last road trip where I've been on the road for 6 weeks, I'm smarter now to know that my body needs a bit of rest. So for the first 3 or 4 days getting home, I don't touch a club.
Yeah, you've learned that over the years that you can get away with that, and it's probably good for you rather than hurting you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So deep down, I sort of feel like I almost feel a bit guilty doing it. Like I feel like, I should be out there, I should be training, but at the same time, I know that the rest is probably more beneficial in the long run.
Plus the balance you have with your family.
Yeah,
because
I've got a young family and a small son, so it's it's there's that element to it as well. So in the PGA Tour season being as long as it is, again, it's more important to have the rest, because my junior schedule when I was really young, it only involved 5 or 6 tournaments in the summer. So it's a totally different ballgame now. But the discipline part for me came early, because I love to play the game.
That's great. So you turn professional, and you go on PGA Tour Canada.
Yep.
Right. Had a lot of success.
Yep.
Played really well. Qualified for the U.S. Open, I think. Maybe at the tail end of that. Talk about that a little bit, and then I've got a question I want to ask about that U.S. Open.
So, 2013 was my first full year as a pro. Backtrack to the fall of 2012, I went through Q school. The last year it was for the PGA Tour. My plan was to go through as an amateur, and if I got all the way through, I would turn pro. And my first stage site was actually Irish Creek. And I remember it was kind of cool and windy that week, and of course playing kind of tough. So I think going into the last day, I was inside the number. It was like top 20 in ties. But back then, like first stage was a real grind. Like now, first stage has become a little bit easier because there's a few more spots.
Right.
But first stage back then was really tough, and I remember coming to the last hole at Irish Creek, being like right around the number. Like I knew I was really close, but probably needed to make a par at least, maybe a birdie. But I ended up leaving myself like 10 feet for par in the last hole, and was just grinding, and poured it in. And I just like let this big fist pump go, like I thought I had done it. And I waited around for an hour to miss by one guy in one spot.
Oh, wow.
So I missed by a shot. And so now I'm, going into 2013, no status, and just trying to kind of get my feet wet with professional golf. So 2013, I started out playing the e-golf tour.
Yep, right in Charlotte.
Yep. So e-golf was a great start for me, because it was the first time I'd really, kind of put my own money down and started playing for it. And, it was a good learning experience. I mean, obviously it's different in the fact that you don't really have the big travel, and, they don't have the pro-am type format to your week. But again, you're playing for money. You're trying to be as organized as you can to play your best golf. And so that led me into PGA Tour Canada, which I ended up getting. So I missed at Q school for PGA Tour Canada, which the PGA Tour Canada Q school when it first started was an absolute joke. Like, I mean, I'll be the first to say it. Like, they opened up a Q school site, and I went to California, and there was 320 guys. There was 320 guys at this Q school.
For how many spots?
For like 30
Holy
or
cow.
40 spots. I mean, it was insane.
That's pretty tough.
It was insane. And like, so you got 2 golf courses with like full morning and afternoon waves. And I'm like, this is chaos. But like, they opened that Q school site, or that registration, and that was those spots were full in like less than a minute. I mean, It was like everyone was ready to go right when that thing opened up, and PGA Tour Canada was the next big thing, because it now allowed you a spot or an avenue to get to the Web.com tour.
Right.
So I didn't get my card. I think I missed by a couple shots there. And so now, again, I've got no status. I'm still kind of floating around. But again, fortunate enough to have some good connections in Canada and be part of that national team. So that sort of, I was able to parlay that into a few exemptions early on PGA Tour Canada. And I remember missing my first few cuts on PGA Tour Canada and, questioning, whether I was good enough to play professional golf. And, you have all these thoughts going on into your head. And the fourth tournament of their schedule, I ended up having a share of the lead or being one back going to the last day, and ended up finishing third. And that was kind of the springboard for me to say, okay, I can do this at this, because PGA Tour Canada felt different than the e-golf, and every level that I kind of moved up felt a little bit different. And you believe in yourself, but sometimes, to see the validation and a nice result is really nice, just a feather in your cap. And so I took that, and I was able to kind of springboard that into qualifying for the U.S. Open like 2 weeks later.
Yeah, won in a playoff, right?
Won in the playoff.
That had to be exciting.
That was the craziest thing in my life. I mean, to that point, I had never done anything that cool. So that was a huge thrill. I can still recall the playoff hole, and the shot I hit was probably still one of the top 5 of my life.
Talk about that. What was the feeling? Describe the shot for us.
So the playoff hole was a dogleg right par 4, probably like 440. And, it was kind of tough though, because I had bogeyed my last hole in regulation, and then had to wait around an hour to find out that I was in a playoff. So, I was definitely kind of kicking myself a little bit with the bogey. And so I go to they tee up on the 10th hole, and it was just me and this other guy. He was a lefty, and he hit a good drive, and I hit my drive a little right. So I'm in the right rough with tree issues, and I know I'm going to be kind of blocked out, so it's not good. I'm definitely behind the 8 ball. And so he goes first, and he hits his shot, I want to say short in the bunker. The pin's kind of back left. He's short in the bunker. I hit mine. So to kind of describe the shot, so I've got 150-ish yards, but I have this massive tree, like huge, tall, thick, wide tree right in front of me. Like there's no like under, there's no around. It's either over or it's, that's all I have. But I've got this like very so-so lie, 150 yards, which is like a 9-iron for me. But I'm so amped up, and I'm like, it's got to be a wedge that I'm going to open up, and I'm just going to swing as hard as I can. And for the life of me, I don't know how I got it to come out the way it did, but it just came out straight up in the air, and it like came out kind of hot. I'm like, this is going to be perfect. And I kind of pulled it just a hair. So I'm like, this is going right at it. And it lands like right by the hole and runs like to the back fringe, like 15 feet past. And I'm like, I have no idea how I did that. Like I literally
out of body experience.
Like close your eyes. Oh my God. And like, I somehow got up there, and he hit it on the green, missed his par putt. So I had 2 putts from like 15 feet, but the hardest 2 putts, probably.
How would you leave yourself?
To this day, probably the hardest 2 putts I've ever had to hit, because I knew I had 2 putts, but it was like a really fast downhill putt. And I remember like thinking, like, I just wanted to like, just get it down there somewhere.
Just ease it down there.
I think I hit it to like 6 inches, and it was like a stress-free tap in.
Nice.
But that was by far the coolest thing I had done to that point in my career. And so I had still, had half my schedule to go on PGA Tour Canada, but now I've got, the U.S. Open, which is a huge
boost, right?
Huge boost. And just, obviously had no idea what to expect going into it, but I'm sure you've got some questions on that.
Yeah, so tell me about the practice round you had with Lee Westwood, and specifically what happened on the drive on the 18th hole.
So the 18th hole at Marion. So Monday was a huge rain that day, and like the golf course was really wet, but we couldn't play all morning because of the rain. And so we teed off in the afternoon on the 14th hole, because the way Marion was set up, like 14 was right by the putting green. So we thought, Scott, my coach, Scott Couch, was caddying for me. So we thought, we'll just go play like 5 holes, get a little feel. And I had played Sunday, so I had played the course. I knew kind of my way around a little bit. So I play 14 through 18 with Lee, and we get to 18T, and 18's like all the way back, and it's like 520, but it's like 270 to the fairway.
Oh my gosh.
And there's like a big upslope, and then there's like a little bit of like a cliff to the right of the fairway where it's like a kind of like a cliff face where it's like just a big valley down to your right. But I remember Lee and I both hitting what we thought were pretty solid drives in the rain that didn't make the fairway.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm thinking to myself, this is gonna be the hardest golf tournament I've ever played in my life. Like, if we're playing it all the way back in these conditions, it's gonna be so hard. And we were like laughing about it, but it was like, I mean, it was insane.
That's a year Rosie won, right?
Yeah, that's the year Rosie won. And I mean, that 18th hole is
brutal, because he had what, 4-iron? That was the legendary 4-iron he had in the last hole.
Yeah,
so.
And I mean, he's hitting, like, to hit that fairway was probably the best shot he hit in that hole, because the fairway runs right to left, and the only way to hit it is to like land it. You have to land it in the right third of the fairway for it to be in the fairway. So you're hitting it into like an 8-yard wide spot.
Jeez.
And it's probably got to be cutting. Like, I remember hitting a good drive there the one day, and like hit out the middle, but I was in the left rough, and now I was chipping out. Like, it was that kind of hole. Jeez, and the hole is 500 yards. So, I mean, the best shot he hit on that hole, I think, was a drive. And, but yeah, that was an unforgettable week, and something that, definitely gave me a taste for what it was like. And I think I missed the cut by 4, but I remember thinking that, I had left so many out there, and that, this was definitely something I wanted to do. Like, I wanted to sign autographs for an hour, and that was the coolest thing, cool. Right? Like, I walked from hole to hole, and everyone wants my autograph, and this is the first time I've ever really signed autographs. So that was definitely a very cool week.
So did that spur you on, because you won your first professional event shortly after that, right?
Yeah.
PGA Tour Canada, you won the Cape Breton Celtic.
Yeah. So when I resumed that schedule a couple weeks later, I went on a stretch, and like there was like a 4-week stretch where I went like 10th, 2nd, 1st, or something like that. I had a really good stretch up there, and I went from kind of just middle of the pack, money lists up there, to number 1 in like a 4 or 5 week span. So, things really changed quickly for me, and I ended up missing the cut at the last event of the year, the Tour Championship, but I'd still done enough to
get your web card,
win the Order of Merit.
Yeah.
And I mean, like everything that happened that year, it was just kind of a blur. Like, I went through those 4 weeks and got to number 1, but it was like 2 months prior to that, when I had missed my first few cuts out there, I was questioning whether,
right. Happens that quickly.
I could do it, right?
Was there something that you changed, that you remember changing in your routine or your practice, or was it just sticking to the plan? I hear that all the time, right? It's a lot of times I know tour players tend to want to reach when they get those down weeks, and they say, I need to make a change, whether it's a coach or whatever. And a lot of times they just need to keep doing what they're doing. Yeah,
well, I remember having people around me telling me, I've always had good support, but, people around me always telling me that, like, what you're doing is good enough, and to stay the course. But I do remember when I finished 4th or 3rd in that tournament, my 4th tournament up in PGA Tour Canada, which is kind of what gave me that little bit of a boost. I remember that week working on something in my swing that wasn't anything new, but I had found a thought for me that just propelled me. Like, I remember hitting it so well that week that it was like, I felt like a new person. Like, I just had something had clicked in my swing that had led me to just that little bit more confidence walking down the fairways and getting to the tees, like thinking, okay, like I've got my swing in a place where I like it a lot. And so that was probably the big thing. But then, again, once I had that result, and got that confidence from that week, it was like the weight had been off my shoulders, and then it kind of validated that what I was doing was good. Like, you're doing the right things, and just continue to stay the course. But it wasn't really anything. I wasn't trying to, change my swing or do anything drastically different. It was just a good swing thought that week, and everything else stayed the same, really. But
so then you get on the web.
Yeah.
and tell us about that first year.
Yeah, so that was, as great as 2013 was as bad as 2014 was. And it wasn't for a lack of good golf. It was probably more so just too much searching, too much trying to be somebody that I wasn't, and just having those down weeks, but thinking that things needed to change rather than just staying the course. And, so I played 20 events that year. I think I made 7 cuts. And, the Web.com tour, like there are some cuts that are really difficult to make. But you can keep your card and do really well if you made half your cuts. But like the cuts I did make, I get to the weekend and I'd put more pressure on myself to do well. And, that was the opposite of what I needed to do, because the harder I try in golf, the worse it gets.
Yeah,
so
heard that.
There's definitely a balance or happy medium as to how much you can, push and try. So that was a very, very tough year. And I remember getting to the end of that year thinking like, this year can't end soon enough.
Right.
And went through Q school in the fall to try and get my card back, got through first stage and then missed it second. So, as fast as I got to the top, or what I thought was the top, now I'm back to sort of square one.
Yeah.
And I'm back with really no status. And because of the way they had structured PGA Tour Canada, you had a year exemption, which was kind of a flawed system, because the year exemption was the year that you'd be spending on the Web.com tour. So now I was left with no status on any tour. So back to square one.
Yeah, and I think this is when we met, actually.
Yeah.
You moved to Charlotte.
Yeah.
I think Derek reached out to me about practicing and looking at you a little bit, and we worked a little bit on your putting. So I'm taking full credit for your win, by the way.
Yeah. It took off from there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I can't believe you fired me after that week. But yeah, so tell us about that process, because now you're having to dig deep, right? I mean, you're like, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Like, give us your mindset, and then how did you?
So
because I talked to you about that a little bit when we were working a little bit, and I know I think you maybe reunited with Scott.
Yeah.
You guys got a better plan. Like, tell us about that.
So I think 2015 was probably one of the best years of my career, even though I didn't have a professional win and I didn't win the Order of Merit. But from a finding my game standpoint, I felt like I had rediscovered who I was. And it was really about getting back to making sure I'd always done a really good job of doing the little things right, but it was, making those things a priority again and saying like, okay, if I can continue on this path and just try and get like 0.1% better over the course of a year and not try to get 10% better in the course of a year, then it's gonna start trending this way. And so that was the biggest thing for me, was, reminding myself who I was when I got to the highest level and what I was doing, and then getting back to doing those simple things. I mean, it was really about making things more simple in 2015.
That's such a great point. I talk a lot about on this podcast. Is one of my favorite quotes now is, don't let best get in the way of better. Right?
Yeah.
Like, don't try to like be number one, and like you said, it's a journey of momentum, and like you said, just get better tomorrow, right?
Yep.
And then trust the people around you, and trust that you're working on the right stuff. And it sounds like what you did is just get back to basics. Sort of, did you do any reflecting at that point? I'm sure there's a lot of reflecting time. Is there anything you do that, I know you're so thorough in your preparation, do you journal, or was there some things you look back on and said, wow, I was doing this when I was successful, and now I just maybe have just gotten a little bit lapse on that?
Yeah, so I reflect a lot with a lot of sports psychologists that I've worked with ever since I was on those Canadian national teams, and also Derek, but mainly within myself. When 2014 ended, a lot of soul searching, a lot of sitting down in a quiet place, thinking like, where did it go wrong, and what do I need to do better to get going the other direction? And I've got numerous notes on my phone when things come to me, and I remember, I've got things on my phone that I've learned in 2014 that I wrote down, and let's see if I can even pull it up.
Yeah, share a couple of those with us. That's really interesting.
But when these things come to me, I write them down. Wherever I am, I want to write them down so that I've got so many things that go through my head in a day, like most of us do.
Sure.
That if you think about this thing one day and then tomorrow you've forgotten about what you were thinking about,
Yeah.
and it might have been a very profound thought. Let's see if I can find it. There we go. So, kind of to one of your points, I wrote down a quote that I liked. Nothing you've been through has been wasted. It's made you stronger and put you in position for a new thing. So I was always of the belief that there was another opportunity waiting because this one didn't work out. I told myself that it doesn't take your best golf to compete with the best. It just requires the right state of mind, and that was the mindset of just getting better versus like trying to get results, trying to win a tournament. Can I get better today?
More process oriented rather than result. Yeah,
exactly.
I like that.
I told myself that taking breaks was important because I finished the Web.com season playing 10 events in a row.
Okay, so you didn't rest enough.
I didn't rest.
Yeah, you didn't
which was crazy.
Okay.
I wanted to talk with my sports psychologist more. I think I took things for granted coming off of 2013, and I wasn't as consistent with my approach to the mental side of things, and that's really where I went wrong for most of the year was I wasn't thinking very well. I said that seeing Scott and Derek at least once every few weeks was important just for maintenance and checkups, and so you don't go 6 weeks and then see one of those guys and they go like, oh, what's going on? Like you're all out of whack. And like,
even if you're playing well,
yeah.
it's good to have that confidence that they're going. You're doing the right things. That's a good point.
I told myself that time management when I'm at a tournament is very important because you go through these long weeks, but if you go to the course trying to spend 3 hours and get this X amount of work done, but it takes you 5 because this guy's talking to you. Oh well, now you've spent an hour at lunch when you're supposed to spend half an hour at lunch. So I really think like kind of scheduling out your day and making certain things a priority and trying to really stay away from like it's very easy to get caught up in like conversations and talking to this guy and all of a sudden now instead of being from 10 to 1, your practice has gone from 10 to 3 or 10 to 4. And you're like, now my day's gone, my nap's gone, all those things. So that was basically, there's a few more things, but that was basically it.
That's
like,
great.
Don't play to the capabilities of others. Play the course the best you can. And one of my words that year was Kaizen, which is like, to get better. And to see where that leaves you, because I think a lot of times I got out there and, I thought that, making the cut was good and that, if I can just get through these 2 days and I got 2 more days, but really, if you're playing great golf, those things take care of themselves. And so 2014 was a big learning year. And then 2015, obviously I refound myself and I got through, PGA Tour Canada got me through one stage of Hughes school, so I got an exemption to second stage. Played great there. I finished second at second stage. Made it to finals, and that was at PGA National that year, which was playing brutally hard.
Yeah, it's a hard golf course.
And I finished up my last day going through the bear trap. So my last 4 holes. I was finishing on the back 9 at PGA National. There was 2 courses, but I was on PGA National last day playing the back 9, and I needed to shoot like probably, I think at worst I needed to shoot like 2 over par in the back 9, but like every hole in the back 9, there's a double or a triple waiting, like just with one bad swing. So that was a really stressful back 9, and I remember making it with like I think 2 shots to spare, but I mean there was a bunch of train wrecks coming in. and I was just trying to stay afloat, and did a good job there. And so now I'm back on the web.com for 2016.
And then you win, right? You win the price cutter charity.
Yeah, but I think what people forget about that year, for me, is that I started that year not very well, and so I got to the halfway point. I think maybe nine events in or 10 events in, and made about half my cuts, but hadn't finished very high. And
where are you on the money list at this point?
Oh, outside the 100 for sure.
Oh wow.
And I tried Monday qualifying for an event in New York, and I missed the qualifier. Thought I wasn't going to get in. So again, now I'm at a point where I'm kind of in no man's land. I'm not getting in the tournaments because of my number. But some weird twist of fate, like a bunch of guys end up withdrawing like the Monday and Tuesday, and by like Tuesday at noon, my number had improved so much I got in the tournament. Well, then I went on to have my best ever finish.
This was your price? Oh, this was different.
This was different. This was
which one was this?
This was the LECOM Health Challenge. This
Gotcha.
is in upstate New York. So I got all my wife's family and friends out watching because my wife's family is from upstate New York, and so I got all of them watching me, and I finished tied for 5th that week, which was by far my best finish out there. And that was really the turning point for me in my whole year. Because then 5 weeks later, I won the price cutter. And even at that point, I'm still fighting for my web.com job. So I'm trying to get in that top 75. And I win that week, which was, again, one of those moments where I finish out the tournament and I'm like, what's just happened? Like
did you see that coming at all? I mean,
like my game
trending a little bit, right?
My game was really good, but I still hadn't really contended a lot out there. So winning, while it was something I thought I could do, wasn't really on the radar. Like I'm trying to have great finishes. I'm trying to be close on Sunday, but unless you're Tiger Woods, you don't really come to every tournament thinking that a win or nothing, right? I mean,
sure.
You think, if I finish 10th, that'd be great, or if I finish top 10 or 5th or whatever. So I remember having a great week there, and once that was all done, I mean, I've got my PGA Tour card. So it's
how'd that feel?
Amazing. I mean, something that you obviously worked a long time for, and had some tough years and some lean years to get there. But yeah, I mean, there's no feeling I've had that's been quite like that. I mean, it's almost better than the win, is getting your card.
So you get on the tour, you're on the big stage, and you got your 5th start. You're in Sea Island. And what happens?
Again, I don't really know. I think the craziest thing for me about that week was that, I led from wire to wire.
Yeah.
So, I shot 61 on Thursday, and
incredible.
Every day I went to bed with a lead.
How did that feel like? I mean, what was that, a challenge mentally, or did you just feel like you were just in the zone so much, like nothing could break through? Or I mean,
that was
everybody wants to know that. It's like, what does that feel like?
That was definitely a challenge mentally. I remember just trying to keep things as consistent as possible, and not that I was superstitious, but I just wanted to keep my same routine. So, my mom was there that week, and my wife, but my wife didn't come in till Friday night. My mom was there earlier in the week, but so I'm wondering to myself, is this going to throw things off when my wife came? And she thought, she thought the same thing when she was coming.
It's like, yeah, it's kind of superstitious, right?
Yeah, now they're here. Is it going to change things? I mean, you just immediately kind of throw those out the window because, I mean, it doesn't change anything. But I remember, watching Friends every night, with a bowl of Cheerios, and that was my routine. That's what I did, and
you just let your secret out.
Yeah, and I remember also, my mom was making meals every week, so we ate in almost every night, and Derek told me to stay away from my phone, but what was weird is I didn't really get bothered by, all the hype around, like, social media and, like, my Twitter blowing up and all that. Like, I was able to kind of, read a little bit of it and then kind of, like, turn it off and put it aside. But I knew that almost trying to avoid it and stay away from it was going to take me more restraint and energy than just to kind of have fun with it, So I just kind of embraced everything about,
What was the feedback that you got?
Well, just that, like, all the hype about, like, all the Canadian media going, Mackenzie Hughes leading and, can he hold on for this win? And, the win comes with the Masters and all this stuff and 1.08 million. And you're like, to get caught up in that wouldn't be very hard. But I just try to tell myself that, there was lots of golf to be played. But at the same time, if I can continue to do what I'm doing, I can do this.
Now you're having to do interviews at the course more than normal, right?
Yeah,
how was that?
Every night, doing media and doing stuff with the Golf Channel and PGA Tour Radio,
right.
And all that was just very new to me. And so yeah, it was that was a whirlwind. But it was almost like a distraction in a sense to do all that media, because, like, you're doing the media, but you're also kind of not thinking about the golf at that point.
Sure.
And so, yeah, it was, again, I don't know what gave me all that belief, but I remember just telling myself, like, going that last day, even that, if I continued to do what I was doing, like, there's no reason why you can't win. And I definitely think winning on the web.com was that kind of extra bit of belief in my back pocket.
Yeah,
like,
that helped you.
I had just won. I had just beaten a bunch of great players. I know how to win. I know I haven't won on the PGA Tour, but I know how to do it. And that was big for me. And then I remember getting a little bit of fire in my belly too, because I remember reading the night before that, Billy Horschel had made a comment that, there's a guy on top of the leaderboard, but, he doesn't have a lot of experience and, he hasn't won out here before, so it's a lot different. And
sure.
I remember thinking to myself, well, I can do it.
I'm going to show him.
Yeah, I can't wait for tomorrow.
Yeah.
And
and they had to go. It was a playoff, right?
Playoff.
And the next day.
Yeah.
So talk about that. The end of that tournament was kind of crazy.
It was crazy. It was finishing around dark, and I actually remember in regulation I had to make a 5-foot putt on 18 just to get into the playoff.
I remember that. Yeah.
Which was incredibly nerve-wracking, because at that point it's like, everything you've worked so hard for all week, could be gone with one putt. And so I rolled that one in and started the playoff, and everyone on the first hole had a decent look from inside of like 25 feet.
Right.
And, I remember missing my putt and Camille having a putt to win it from like 15 feet. And I'm thinking, like, oh my gosh,
yeah.
like, he's going to pour it in. He's going to win this thing. And he missed that. So we go to the next hole, play 18 again. And now it's my turn with the last putt. I got like a 10-foot putt, and it's really dark at this point. Like the camera,
yeah, it was hard to see.
The camera's lighting it up, but it's very dark. And I hit what I thought was a perfect putt, and like a foot from the hole, I'm like I've done it. I was almost like in my head about to celebrate, and it just wiggled left at the end, and I was just in disbelief. But I couldn't see that break. It was just so dark, and so now we're for sure coming back the next day, and the next day I just tried to go through my full routine like it was going to be a normal round of golf. So it was 8 a.m. restart. I was up at 5, going through my full routine, full warm-up, working out in the morning, because I didn't know if it was going to be 9 holes, 1 hole,
right,
a full 18. It was 4 guys. You never know.
Exactly.
So I was fully ready to go, and a pretty brutal hole to start on. You're hitting a 195-yard shot. It's 40 degrees. Wind's blowing in off your right. You're just praying you don't hit it thin, so you got like that hand shaking for like a 5-minute stretch. But it was. I couldn't have hit it in a worse spot. I had 2 guys miss the green ahead of me, and I thought, wow, the door's wide open. And then that 4th guy must have been thinking, wow, the door's really wide open now. And he missed the green. So, it was 4 guys, like 3 guys that haven't won, and 1 guy hasn't won in a while. And that's your first shot, Monday morning playoff. It was a pretty brutal start. And I remember thinking, okay, everyone's got a tough shot. Like, if we can just kind of make our three and get out of here, like, we got a chance. And I remember everyone had work left after the putt, but obviously, I had left my shot just off the green, and I mean, I was really close to being perfect. But I was first to putt, and I'm thinking to myself when I've got 17 or 16 feet, wherever it was. I mean, I'm like, well, odds are stacked against me. But then I remember, like, before I putted, thinking, like, if I just flip this around and, like, what if I poured in first? Like, what if I am in the hole first with par and these guys have to make on top of me? That really flips the switch.
Sure.
So I kind of just thought to myself, like, let's just try and put a good roll on this thing, and let's put a little heat on them. And I mean, it would have gone in a small hole.
That was a great putt.
It was like right in the middle of the hole, and I mean, I'd never want to do it again, because I remember definitely shaking and thinking your hands, your knees, everything's
like,
shaking.
how do you come up with that, right? I mean, under that much pressure, what do you draw upon?
Because look at the odds of making those putts. I mean, they're kind of low. I mean, especially in that situation. And then I just remember thinking to myself, like, okay, I've got another hole to play. I've got life, and then I proceed to watch a couple of guys miss, and that's the first time it really dawns on me that I could win right here.
Yeah.
But I'm telling myself that I'm going to 18T.
Yeah, you got to be ready to play.
I'm going to 18T, and I'm ready to hit my tee shot. And when his putt missed, I mean, just totally I had no idea what to do. I was just totally speechless, totally lost for words. And at that point, obviously, my life has just changed.
Absolutely. So that gets you into the Masters.
Yep.
So how was it rolling up Magnolia Lane for the first time?
So first time, Magnolia Lane, I went with Derek, and we went to play a practice round. But I think the coolest part about going to Augusta for the first time is that you're doing it, like, I went ahead of time before the tournament, but you're going there when it's like relatively quiet.
Sure.
The stands aren't up, people aren't there, and you roll up to Magnolia Lane, and they've got the big pillars in front, like, so you can't really just drive in, and you get to the gate and you tell them your name, and like, oh yeah, Mr. Hughes, like, welcome, like, and they lower the pillars and you drive down, and I just remember thinking, like, oh my gosh, like, this is the absolute most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And
that's the first time you saw the course, like, you'd never visited.
I had been there, and I'd been there for a practice round,
but not as a player, right?
Yeah, and just to drive right down the main entrance. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the coolest things ever. So
Scott wanted me to ask you about their social media policy. What is that about? Was there an incident?
So
did you take too many pictures?
I couldn't take pictures inside the clubhouse. Well, I took a couple, but I couldn't. They made sure that, like, we got an envelope when we were eating lunch the first day, and it was just basically like, hey, if you're going to take pictures, don't post them on social media.
Yeah.
And that was just fine. I mean, as long as I had them for me, that was fine. So I took pictures around the golf course and all that stuff. But, yeah, they're very, very strict about that sort of stuff.
Yeah. I remember the April Fool's joke, I think. I can't remember who it was. Ian Poulter, somebody posted that they got kicked out because they took too many pictures.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, I mean that's for real.
Yeah, and they don't mess around with that kind of stuff. So if you're gonna cross them and break the rules, then they'll kick you out.
That's awesome. All right, so before we get into some of these rapid fire questions, I appreciate your time. This has been fantastic. Talk to us a little bit about your preparation. Let's just say for a tournament week. Like, take us through a tournament week and give the listeners a little bit of what you do on each day and, like, how you prepare for a PGA Tour event.
Yeah, so a normal week, and again, there's lots of factors, because if I'm coming off of a long stretch, or it might be my fourth or fifth week in a row, my prep is different than if it's like next week where I've got just one tournament and then a week off. But, like, going into, say, like, let's just use next week as an example. So, like, I get there Monday, and I'm playing in a Pro-Am, So I volunteered to play in that one, which is actually, it's a paid pro-am.
And that's on Monday?
On Monday.
Okay.
So I look at it as a, I was going to play the course anyways, but
This is the Honda, by the way,
Honda.
for everybody.
Yeah. So
whenever this comes out.
PGA National. And so I'll get there Monday. I usually register first thing. And Monday is either play 9 holes kind of day, or it might just be a practice day. But usually Monday would be the lighter of the days, and just trying to get my feel for the property, see how the conditions are. So if I either play 9 holes or I practice, I'm just getting a feel for either like the speed of the greens, doing a light like maintenance practice, nothing too crazy. And then Tuesday is usually like the full practice round day, so I'll play 18 holes Tuesday. And
do you have like a normal group that you play with? Do you have who are your best friends out there on tour that you normally?
I play with probably 4 or 5 guys most of the time. So like I know Nick Taylor is a good buddy of mine. Corey Connors. There's a couple of guys,
the Canadian guys.
Yeah, a couple of American guys that I play with. So like Brandon Harkins and Joel Damon. I play with them a little bit. So, but I play with like probably 3 or 4 guys all the time.
I was wondering if you like try to like seek out guys that maybe have had success or some of the veterans.
Sometimes I'll just go to the tee too, and I'll just kind of see what game I come up with. And I've come up with a few games that I've enjoyed just kind of randomly.
Sure.
But I don't seek out like Tiger to go play a practice round or anything like that. But so that would be Tuesday would be a full day of a practice round, which usually will take 5 hours, and then I'll work in probably another 2 hours of practice, whether that be like an hour putting.
So you sort of assess where you're at after that day to see what you need to work on,
and I see energy levels too. Like if I feel like I have a lot of energy, like I'm okay putting in a few hours of practice. But if I'm like, I'm really dragging, I might just do like an hour of putting and get out of there and just say, you know what, like I'm feeling pretty good. I don't need to overdo it. And that's the other hard part too, is that, just sometimes being content with saying, it's good enough right now. Like, yeah, I can go chase perfect on the range, but like, is that going to really make me better by Thursday? So that's, again, a hard part for someone that wants to grind a lot of times.
Weighing rest over skill acquisition.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's almost like, people like to compare it to like, cramming for a test. Like, if you don't have it like, the night before, chances are you don't have what you need. So like cramming, 2 or 3 days before, getting a bunch of extra reps in, you might find something, but you're not going to really change your game in a 2-day span. You have what you have, and you have to go manage it around and do your best to put up a score. So, I would get through Tuesday, and again, sort of at that point, I'm going to eyeball or kind of get an idea for what my tee time is. So if I'm late on Thursday, I'll typically try and go late Wednesday and do like an afternoon practice session. Or if I'm early Thursday, I'll do an early morning Wednesday practice session.
Give you some rest in between.
Yeah. And so then Wednesday is a day where they have the official Pro-Am. So and this year I'm not in those, and I base my day around the Pro-Ams, and so I'm doing really just like a 3-hour practice, and I just try and break it down. I do like about an hour of putting, do an hour of short game, and I'll hit balls for about an hour.
How much of that is drills, and how much of it is just random practice?
I would say like if I'm so like putting and full swing, like I would do like probably like a third of that would be like just block practice, like whether it's like string, or I'm just like putting a stick down the range, just hitting some block iron shots to like a flag working on alignment and maybe one little swing thought. And then the rest of that time I'd be like games and like competing with myself, or like playing a TrackMan game where I'm trying to do like, a wedge test or a short iron test and dial in distances. Just more of like a simulate what you're going to do on the golf course.
So you travel with TrackMan?
Yeah. So I have my own TrackMan, travel with it.
Do you set up your own tests, or you like Scotty help you out? I'm sure.
I set up most of my own tests, and mostly it's just around wedges and short irons.
Random distances.
Yeah, I'll do a combine every now and then, but like, for example, Torrey Pines, I'll set up a test where I'll do like an iron test, but I'll base it all on shots from 150 to 225. because Torrey Pines demands some longer shots.
Gotcha.
So you might hit some 4-irons and some par 4s or some 5-irons. And, so that's just a great way to kind of get yourself ready. Okay, you've got one shot, you need to hit 215. Are you hitting your numbers? Are you hitting, at least pretty close to your numbers on those shots? And just, again, it's just trying to simulate what you're going to do. You're going to have, this shot's 215. Okay, now you've got 150. You're hitting a 9-iron. Okay, next shot's 175. You're hitting a smooth 7, taking a little off it. So that's kind of my Wednesday. And again, it's nothing super heavy. It's just I'm just trying to do a little maintenance, play some games, get a little confidence, and get out of there. And probably throw in a workout, a light workout Wednesday, and be ready to go for Thursday. And then Thursday, like my pre-round warm-ups, like if I have an 8 a.m. tee time, I usually try and get up about 3 hours before my tee time, so I get up around 5, and that involves about 30 minutes of being in the gym.
And what are you doing there? More stretching or just like light cardio, or what is the?
It's a lot of movement stuff,
Okay.
with about maybe like 5 minutes of like mobility, but then I also want to do some like stuff where I get my body moving and get a little bit of a sweat going. I want to like turn things on and get activated and feel like I'm, springy. There's been a lot of studies done on like static stretching before your round, and like that's not very good for you because it slows you down and reduces the speed. So like I'm always aware of like trying to be dynamic and moving around and
So that's your stretching. That's your
like
warm up.
if I do hamstrings, I'm gonna do I call them leg swings. So I'm just gonna like kick my hamstrings up to try and get up my head or whatever.
Gotcha.
And I want it to be dynamic so that I'm staying springy and I'm staying fast. So that'd be my warm up, and then I'll probably spend 10 minutes going over my book, my yardage book, putting the pins in, seeing where the pins are, and kind of eyeing up like certain pins as to like, okay, I can kind of go at some of these pins, or these ones I can't. And then I spend about an hour warming up and putting before my round. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
That's really good. So what are some of the lessons that you've learned since you've been out on tour that maybe you wish you would have known when you were on Canadian tour or on the mini tours? Anything that comes to mind?
I think if I could, give advice to my Canadian tour self, it would just be that it doesn't need to be perfect, and sometimes good enough is okay, and that the guys that play on the PGA Tour are far from perfect, but they're aware of that, and they do a good job managing their games and scoring the ball. And that's really what golf is about, is scoring your golf ball, not about how pretty it looks and how flashy it can be and how far you hit it. It's about a golf score, really. So I think telling myself that 4 or 5 years ago would have been pretty valuable, because I think at the time you think I need to be so much better, and these guys don't miss shots really, and they're so good, and then they are really, really good, but they miss shots and they get up and down, or they miss putts and they make a putt in the next hole.
Yeah.
It's not anything super crazy, but yeah, they I've seen some really bad shots out there, and
Sure.
if you could like put yourself in that spot where you're like, wow, I mean, these guys can have these kind of shots, like I can,
Saw Justin Thomas shank it
yeah,
yesterday.
yeah, and then he
Or
got
whatever.
up and down
Right,
from far,
exactly,
right?
yeah.
He just kind of shook it off and was like, well,
Yeah, they don't let it
I'll go up
bother
and
him.
down. Yeah, so it's a really crazy game, and like this entire conversation, there's been glimpses of when I've told you that like I felt like I didn't have it, or that the golf game wasn't there, and then like 2 months later or 3 months later, it's like you're on top of the world. So like
Yeah.
golf can be so funny like that, where it can really flip on a dime, and you go from questioning things and searching to getting back to basics, and then boom, all of a sudden you've won a tournament, or you've got your card, or so really, really wild career so far, but mostly been good, and the down times have definitely made the really good moments that much sweeter. So winning on tour or winning your Rep.com event, when you've had a year like you did in 2014 where, you lost your status completely. I mean, that's, that really makes those moments extra special. So not everyone is cut out for going through those moments and kind of coming back from those things. But, I knew that it was something I was going to do for a long time, and I really wanted to play golf, and I could do it. So just, sticking with it. And, obviously it takes a lot of perseverance, but
that's what you're made of, man.
Yeah.
That's what makes me great. That's what makes you great. And that's what I admire most about you. Give me something on your bucket list. What's next for you? What's a big goal for you?
Bucket list would be a Open at St. Andrews. That would be really sweet. I'm not sure when the next one at St. Andrews is, but that's something I'd love to do one day.
All right, last question. If you had a gigantic billboard and you could put anything on it that would get a message to billions of people, what would it be and why?
Oof. That's a big one.
Could be a quote, could be a mantra, could be, the life lesson.
Yeah. I think something that's always been with me for my entire career, and I've always applied this to like my everyday life as well, but like, for one, people underestimate how important breathing is. But I would just say, I would put down 2 words on the board, and I would just say, like, I would just put patience, period, breathe, period. Because there's so many moments in life that are going to throw you for a loop, or they're going to, it's not going to go perfect. It's not going to be quite what you wanted. But if you take a second, sit back, and realize that, almost everything happens for a reason, and that there's there's a next big thing in store for you. If one thing didn't work out, there's another opportunity waiting for you. But just having the patience to go through life and accept some of these things, breathe through these tough moments, and then, go face the next challenge, because golf is like that every day. Like, those things resonate with me every day. But I think as it relates to everyday life, that's the exact same things that you need to focus on as well, because, you're going to have bad moments, like you hit bad golf shots. You're going to need to be patient through those tough moments, the adversity. You're going to need to breathe so you can think clearly and get oxygen to your brain. And then you're going to need to go face that next task with, an open mind and a kind of a clear slate. So that would be my 2 things: patience and breathe.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's such a great way to close.
Yeah.
How can the listeners follow you? I know you're on social media.
Yep.
Tell them how they can reach out to you and give you a social wave.
Yeah. So I'm on Twitter. Mac Hughes Golf is my handle. The same thing on Instagram. I think I'm Mac Hughes Golf as well. And then I have a golf page on Facebook as well. It's Mackenzie Hughes Golf. So if you want to follow along or reach out, have any questions, let me know.
You're a pretty good Snapchat follow, actually.
Yeah. If you want to add me on Snapchat, I don't even know what my name is. Just search my name and it should come up. But I'm open to any kind of questions that you have on social media. So if you have any questions for me, fire away.
Great stuff, man. Thank you so much for doing this.
You got it.
I'm a big fan, and thanks for being such a great friend and doing this.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks, Jason.
What's up, everyone? Guru back here again with a couple of things before you go. First, big thank you to Mac Hughes for coming through and getting on the show and sharing his story and some great advice for you young juniors and college players out there and golfers alike that want to play at the highest level. Just a fantastic conversation. I can't thank him enough for doing this, taking time out of his busy schedule. So make sure to reach out to Mackenzie on Twitter, again, at Mac Hughes Golf, and follow him on the PGA Tour. You can follow me and reach me on the Twitter or Instagram at Golf Guru TV. Shoot me a DM, ask me a question, follow my stuff online. I appreciate it. Also, check out my website at golfgurutv.net, where you can find videos, articles, and more information on my teaching and coaching. If you have a question or comment, you can email the show at golfgurushow@gmail.com, or again, hit me up on the DM. The show and all episodes of the Golf Guru Show were produced by myself, Jason Sutton. Music is by Zach Mullet, aka Cutta Beats. Leave me an iTunes review or a rating. That would be great for the success of this show, and to get my rating up on Apple Podcasts. That would be awesome. Let me know how I'm doing. Leave me a 5-star review. That would be sweet. And as I leave you with every show, it's so important that you study, practice, teach, and then pass it on. I'll talk to you next time. Thanks so much for listening.